This month, May 2025, marks my 50th anniversary as a wargamer, and I wanted to talk about it today on Greyhawk. So it was 50 years ago this month that I actually started playing my first war game, and that was Tactics 2. This is the actual game that I played. This is the same copy that I had back in 1975. I was, let's see, I would have been 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old, and a friend of mine, Susan Berman, had this game in their house. She was my age, but she didn't know anything about it. And I saw it, and I asked about it, and they let me borrow it. And over that summer, I taught myself how to play Tactics 2. It's an introductory war game, and I just remember staying up on weekends and during summer and learning how to play it, reading the rules over and over and over and over until I got it. And that started me off on wargaming, and that started in May of '75. So from there, I got more war games, Avalon Hill and SPI war games mostly. Africa Corps, and my first SPI war game I remember. My mom took me and my friend Tommy, who I've talked about on this channel before. Took us into New York City to go to Polk's Hobbies, which was in the Empire State Building, and they didn't have the game I wanted. So they told us to go around the corner to the Complete Strategist, which is still there. And I go there every once in a while. Eric Tenkar does a pilgrimage there every year, and so I walked in there, and it's just like floor to ceiling war games and everything. And I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. And of course, over the years, the Complete Strategist has gotten more into role playing games. They still have war games, and they have all kinds of other things there too, all kinds of other game related stuff. And I even worked in the Complete Strategist in Boston when I was out of college, so that's something. And so I got really into wargaming. I subscribed to Strategy and Tactics, which was SPI's monthly magazine, and in every magazine you got a new war game. So they were cranking out 12 games a year, and it was amazing. And I went to conventions. They had wargaming conventions back then, and I would read magazines and so forth. And you couldn't get away from this thing called Dungeons and Dragons. This would be 75. Now we're into like 76 and 77. And you couldn't get away from it. It was, everybody was talking about this. So I guess it would have been 77 that I got my little brown books. I got the white box, and I read it. I couldn't make heads or tails. I had no idea what this thing was supposed to be about. And then I got a copy of Holmes Basic, which I also still have my original one back on the shelf. And from there, I went into D&D and everything. But I still stayed a war game throughout all of this. And I in college I got into miniatures wargaming because we had something there called the Boston University Simulation Society, and they were big. They had a huge Napoleonics wargaming thing, and I got into the campaign, and we got to doing the things. So I kept up with the wargaming, and I kept up buying hex and counter war games, and I got into miniatures gaming and so forth and so on. And it's important to remember that the world of Greyhawk actually came out of a war game uh, scenario. They had the club up there in Lake Geneva, and they had the known world. It wasn't the known world; it was the Great Kingdom, I guess. And they each of the players ran kingdoms, and they had the things. And it's a lot like the Tony Bath Hyboria war game campaign, where I have which is actually a book that I have, and where he talks about you have each player runs a kingdom and how to organize the armies, and you have character sheets and so forth. So it was very much of they mixed in a little bit of Brownstein type wargaming in with their wargaming. Hi everybody. Please help me keep Greyhawk alive by liking this video and subscribing. It really does help. You can also become a member of the channel or support me on Patreon and get early access to my videos, exclusive content, free or at cost copies of my Greyheim Adventures modules, and more. Thanks. And now back to the show. And, of course, Dungeons and Dragons comes out of Chainmail, which was a medieval war game. It was meant to be played with, little miniature figures and, on a sand table. And there was that famous fantasy appendix where you could have elves and orcs and balrogs and ents and so forth. That was the ultimate genesis of Dungeons and Dragons, was wargaming. So this all came out of wargaming. D&D came out of wargaming. The World of Greyhawk came out of wargaming. A lot of the names that you see in the Floness behind me, those were originally names out of that Lake Geneva wargaming campaign that they did. So it was just the history of wargaming and the history of Dungeons and Dragons and Greyhawk are intertwined, and there's no way to extricate them. And of course, later on, as D&D progressed, they tried to bring it back to its wargaming roots. They had a battle system, which I guess was a second edition era thing, where you had mass combat, or big skirmishes, I guess is a better way to put it, with counters, and you'd move them and so forth. And one of the Dragonlance modules was actually a war game. It was, they had hexes and counters, and you'd move the armies of the War of the Lance around, and it was it was a hoot. I loved that. Obviously, for me, that was like my favorite one of the Dragonlance series. And then later on, they tried to redo Chainmail in 2001, and they set that in the world of Greyhawk. And again, that's another skirmish game that they did. Skirmish games being a much smaller scale than the kind of mass combat games. And then now, most recently, I'm doing a mass combat war game, Swords of Battle, and I've been running it at conventions and so forth. And this is a true mass battle thing. It feels like a miniatures war game that I will play at Historicon or something. It feels like you got lines of infantry and cavalry and so forth, and they move at each other. So it's still trying to bring the wargaming aesthetic back into Greyhawk and back into D&D. So it's just something. I know this is kind of Greyhawk light in terms of the content, but given that it is my 50th anniversary, I wanted to to put out something in there just to remind everybody of D&D's wargaming roots and Greyhawk's wargaming roots and my own wargaming roots. And I'm sure I'm not the only person out there who started in wargaming and then moved into role playing. If you're one of them, if you're like me, I would love to hear your journey. What was the first war game you bought? Did you ever go to one of the big gaming conventions, war gaming conventions back in the day? Gen Con, that's another good thing. Gen Con had all kinds of wargaming way back in the earliest days, and Origins, of course, had its start as a wargaming convention. They had Atlanticon and Origins East and so forth. So there was all these cons that were like really wargame heavy, and then all of a sudden the balance kind of tipped over to role playing games. And it's you can't get away from it. So anyway, if you followed that same path, I would love to hear from you. Tell me some of your wargaming experiences. Do you still wargame? Do you still go to conventions? Because I go to Historicon every year. I'd love to make it to another one, like Little Wars or Cold Wars or one of those. They're all over the place. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. This little walk down memory lane with me. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.